I think President Biden historically has been a lack of a better word, elected official, but Donald Trump is the end of democracy as we know it. Every time there's a Republican candidate, people say, "Oh, it's the end of democracy." He's the people go so far as to say, "Oh, he's the Antichrist." But this is one of those times where it really actually positively is true.
Charlemagne the God expressed his frustrations with the two front runners for the presidential election, the 2024 presidential election, who of course include Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Now, many Americans are right there with him. Many Americans feel the exact same way that Charlemagne feels. They're not happy with Biden. Obviously, he's deeply unpopular when you take a look at his approval rating, but they don't want to vote for Donald Trump either. So this is why we're now hearing about a new super PAC. They've just announced that they're going to support a so-called unity ticket for the presidential race. But remarkably, that mystery candidate and their running mate will probably be even less popular than Biden and Trump. And I'm gonna explain why in just a moment. Before we get to that, let's first watch a little more of what Charlemagne had to say.
It's not that I regret endorsing Joe Biden. It's just that, I think that we all can get burned by politicians. Because when I say endorsing, I put my name and my reputation on the line with my listeners. And when my listeners feel like he didn't deliver, they come back to me and they say, "Hey man, you're the one who told us to vote for Joe Biden. You're the one who told us to vote for Kamala Harris." So, I care about my listeners and what my listeners think. But I do want to say that, I think President Biden historically has been a lack of a better word, elected official, but Donald Trump is the end of democracy as we know it.
So you'd vote for Biden again?
I'm not saying either or. Donald Trump is the end of democracy as we know it. I don't know what to tell people. And I know it sounds, when you say that now in 2024, you've heard it so much because every time there's a Republican candidate, people say, "Oh, it's the end of democracy." He's the people go so far as to say, "Oh, he's the Antichrist." But this is one of those times where it really actually positively is true.
I know. We get it every election cycle. This is the most consequential presidential election in history. This is the most important presidential election. Oh my God, if you don't vote the right way, if we don't elect the right person, our democracy as we know it will come to an end. I know. Look, just to respond to what Charlemagne had to say there about, if I'm endorsing someone and that person ends up being an awful leader, well then my audience members come to me and they get mad at me for doing it. Listen, you guys are adults. You guys vote however you want to vote, okay? I'm an adult, you're an adult. I'm not gonna judge you and you shouldn't judge me. That's how it should play out. I don't control you. I can tell you what I think and you can respond to what I think in any way that you'd like. But I can't stand this whole environment, this whole culture of who are you voting for? And oh my God, you endorsed this person and you voted for that person. They ended up being a massive steaming pile of crap. How could you? Well, I don't have predictive skills, neither does Charlemagne. And quite frankly, in 2020, when people were being encouraged to vote for Biden, someone who I didn't vote for actually, I wrote in Bernie Sanders' name. What ends up happening is you forget that the whole reason why Biden was elected into office is because everyone thought he was the only candidate who could beat Trump, but no one was excited about him. No one was excited about Biden. And if you start your term knowing that the majority of people who voted for you weren't really excited for you in the first place, then you gotta show them the type of leadership that persuades them that you're actually a pretty damn good leader. Okay, so putting that aside, let's get to the group that's looking to give you a third option, okay? So look, the reason why many Americans are frustrated is because they feel the same way that Charlemagne the God does. And apparently a new super PAC called New Leaders 2024 is hoping to capitalize on that angst. So they just announced that they plan to throw their weight behind a new candidate. They didn't name a person, but here's what they wrote on their website. New Leaders 2024 is being formed to support the election of a no labels unity ticket should one be named in the coming weeks. Most Americans clearly believe a Biden versus Trump rematch fails to offer them a choice that fulfills the full promise of a healthy democracy. The people are demanding another option. And if No Labels sounds familiar to you, it's because No Labels is something that we've talked about on the show in the past. We're gonna get back to that in just a moment, but here's a little more from their statement on their website. A Unity ticket is the innovation our democracy needs in today's broken political dynamic. I don't know why democracy is, okay, anyway. Entrenched institutional interests will continue to howl in protest about a Unity ticket, but these protests will be brought by the same partisan adherents that have stood by, or worse, overseen the selection of their deeply flawed likely party nominees. Okay, so listen, I like the idea of working toward ensuring that Americans have another option. So it's not down to Donald Trump and Joe Biden and RFK Jr., who I think is a lunatic and I have no interest in. No. Unfortunately, in this case, this is really about pushing for a third option that is deeply, deeply, deeply involved in the corporate world of America, deeply influenced by the corporate world of America. So for starters, No Labels is in fact a dark money organization that is funded by corporations and billionaires. Last year, for instance, Mother Jones had obtained a list of the 36 wealthy donors who wrote checks to support the organization. This is back in 2022. And that roster really does include, I mean, the who's who of corporate interests. People from major companies like Lowe's. Lowe's Corporation has donated money to No Labels. You also have Fluor, which is an engineering and construction giant. Abry Partners, a private equity firm. You've got SailPoint, a tech firm, and Fortress Investment Group. So all these corporate interests have been backing No Labels, and they've been doing so in order to protect their own corporate interests. So the idea that this organization is going to result in the kind of ticket that will attract American voters, I think is laughable, because it would be the kind of ticket that's representative of the dysfunction and the greed that led to someone like Donald Trump in the first place. Think about what his campaign messaging was like in 2016. It was highly effective because he purported to give a damn about the economic frustrations that Americans had been suffering from. Okay, the corporate greed that had led to their jobs being outsourced. Okay, the globalization that also led to their jobs being outsourced. That is what Donald Trump spoke to. We know that he wasn't legitimately concerned about those issues because the only thing he accomplished in his term really was a massive tax cut for the rich. And his supporters will also hang their hat on the fact that he successfully nominated and confirmed 3 conservative Supreme Court justices, and I'll give them that, they're right. I mean, he did accomplish that. But in terms of policies, he managed to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget by giving corporations and the wealthy a massive tax cut. And by the way, if you're middle class and you experienced a little bit of a tax cut as well, those are the tax cuts that are set to expire very soon. So I hope you enjoyed them because they're gone. Anyway, but let's get back to No Labels and this new super PAC funding a potential third ticket here. Some of those donors, by the way, have poured money into the presidential campaigns of Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden as well. So the same players are involved, the same players who funded the very candidates that we're annoyed by, frustrated by, want nothing to do with. But others have spent millions on Republican causes as well. Notable within this group is Michael Smith, the billionaire founder of natural gas behemoth Freeport LNG. He has donated more than $5.5 million to the Senate Leadership Fund, a super PAC tied to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. And we all know how popular Mitch McConnell is. Not popular at all, very unpopular in fact. Louis Bacon, billionaire CEO of hedge fund Moore Capital Management, gave $1 million each to No Labels and the Republican Party after donating the maximum allowable contribution to Kyrsten Sinema, the person who ran as a progressive, then became a moderate Democrat, and then during Biden's term decided, no, I'm an independent because I really like corporate greed. Nelson Peltz, a major backer of former Republican President Donald Trump and a billionaire investor, gave $900,000 to 2 No Labels political action committees and also maxed out his donations to Sinema. So that already sounds bad, but are you ready for it to get even worse? Because it's about to. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who recently said he would not seek re-election, has suggested he's considering a presidential campaign. And he is seen as a top potential candidate by some in no labels, not by the American people, not by the typical American voter, but by no labels. Because it seems like they really have their finger on the pulse in terms of what Americans are looking for. So we can't say for sure that Manchin will be their pick, but it does seem very certain that a corporate ghoul like him will end up as the no labels choice in this so-called unity ticket. And just last month, former Senator Joe Lieberman, the founding chairman of the organization, stated that there would be a lot of people in no labels who would be happy to give consideration to Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley is the one who proudly declares on national television that she is a union buster, who proudly not only takes corporate money, but thinks that she absolutely should, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about, nothing to be ashamed of. She caters to the corporate donors and does it proudly. So I guess they're thinking, look, if Nikki Haley isn't gonna get the GOP nomination, then we need to find a third option, a so-called unity ticket, and it's gonna have that facade of bipartisanship. But whoever that candidate is and whoever their running mate is, they're very similar in the most important area. And that area is look out for corporate interests to the detriment of the country and the American people. So unfortunately, there ain't anything to get excited about with this unity ticket that might or might not happen. At the end of the day, it's just another effort for corporations and corporate interests to get the representation they're looking for in the executive branch.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.